For here are members of the National PBOs Consortium, which is bringing together PBOs from across the country. Today we are here to announce to you about the progress we have made since the commencement of the PBO Act on 14th of May 2024. First of all, before we begin, we want to recognize the government for taking a bold step to commence the PBO Act. The commencement has taken place 11 years after the Act was enacted. So this is actually a very bold step from the government of His Excellency President Dr. William Samoei Ruto. But today we have issues that we want to raise regarding the progress with the implementations of the PBO Act. First of all, we want to go back to the history a bit. You know, when the Act was enacted in 2013, the functions for implementing the PBO Act were domiciled under the Ministry of Devolution and Planning. So in 2013, in the second executive order of 2013 that was issued by the president, former President Uhuru Kenyatta, placed the PBOs, then NGOs, under the Ministry of Devolution. But the government failed to commence the Act. This led the sector to move to court in 2015 under a petition 351 of 2015, where the issue was the civil societies then were going to court complaining that the Ministry of Devolution had refused to commence the Act contrary to the law. In fact, the courts granted the leave that was sought by the civil society and ordered the Ministry of Devolution to commence the Act. But because the government by then had issues with the civil society, through an executive order number 1 of 2016, then President Uhuru Kenyatta created a new department called the National Planning and Statistics and moved PBOs from devolution to that department. The aim of that was to defeat the court order that wanted or that had ordered the Devolution Ministry to commence the Act. Subsequently, in 2018, through another executive order number 1 of 2018 in June, then former President Uhuru Kenyatta reorganized the government again and now moved the implementation of PBOs from the planning and devolution to the interior. And that is where the PBOs are up today. So yesterday, we petitioned the office of His Excellency the President, Dr. William Samoei Ruto, asking the office of the President to issue another executive order to revoke the order that was given by the former President that placed the PBOs and NGOs under the interior. Why are we saying that the PBOs cannot be under the interior? If you look at the PBO Act itself, it talks about creating an enabling environment for the PBOs. The continued staying of the PBOs under the Ministry of Interior, instead of giving us an enabling environment, it is giving a chilling environment. Because all of us know, according to the Constitution, the principles of national security is to protect the country from internal and external threats. So by placing the PBOs to the Ministry of Interior, it amounts to saying that we as PBOs are a threat to the security of this country, which we are not. And that's why we are saying that an executive order of a president can only be revoked by another executive order. And that's why yesterday we presented a petition as required by law under Article 37 to the office of the President, asking the President to reconsider issuing another executive order to revoke the one that placed the PBOs in the Interior Ministry. So it's our hope that the Office of the President will act, because if the Office of the President doesn't act, then we will be left with no option but to move to court. And because we know the President, while announcing that the law will be commenced, he said that his government is willing to work with the sector. And we believe that the President will hear our cry and our call and ensure that the PBOs are taken to the devolution and planning sector as was envisaged in the past. So that's what we want to tell you today. And maybe I would also welcome some of my colleagues to say something, unless maybe you have a question. Of course, the law is very clear, and it says that there are a number of days, and the days ranges from 5 days to 28 days. And of course, if we don't get satisfactory response from the Office of the President, because we believe that the matters that we have raised in this petition that we sent to the Office of the President are grounded in law, and they are based on facts, and they are backed by the Constitution of Kenya 2010. So if we don't get any response from the Office of the President, then we'll be left with the option to move to court to seek interpretation, or maybe to ask the court to declare that executive order that was issued by the former president invalid. Because it is only the president who can do that. It is in the purview of the executive. But if the president does not respond to us, then we'll move to court seeking the same prayers that we sought from the president. Because the law is very clear that the president can issue such orders pursuant to Articles 132B of the Constitution and Article 135. And it says that such orders must be in writing, because the former executive order was in writing and under the seal of government. It can only be revoked by a similar order by the president, and that's why we thought that it is only the Office of the President that can come in. When you place it under the Ministry of Interior, then it means that we are a terrorist group. It means the government is looking at us as Al-Shabaab or as groups, proscribed groups. We are not proscribed groups. The PBOs are organizations that are having activities to benefit the public. Some of them are talking about drinking water, educating the public. These groups should not be lumped together by proscribed groups like Al-Shabaab. We are not shifters. We operate in the open. You see, groups that are a security threat don't petition. You see, we petition in the open, it was received, and that's why we're saying that continuing placing us. In fact, if the Act itself in Section 2 says the Ministry of Planning and Devolution, so the Act itself. So that's why we are saying that the Executive Order number 1 of 2018 by the former president is illegal itself, because the Act talks about planning and devolution, yet we are being placed under the Interior Ministry. So we know it's not the problem of the current president, but now that he's the president, he has the constitutional, legal, and moral responsibility to correct the things that were done wrong in the past regime. We have seen the President William Ruto issuing orders to revoke some orders that were done by the former government. This is one of them. And we feel that now that the law has been commenced, and we congratulate his government for doing that, now he should also correct that illegality by taking the PBOs to where they belong. Because PBOs work in the counties, we work in the wards, we work in the villages. We don't work in police stations, we don't work in military camps. So putting us under the Interior Ministry is considering us as threats to security, which we are not.
My name is Silvanus Kasiti from National PBOs Consortium. Vile mwenzangu, my fellow comrade amesema, jana tuliweza kumpelekea rais wetu His Excellency Dr. William Samoei Ruto petition ya kusema kwamba tunataka PBOs ziondolewe kwa Ministry ya Interior, zirudishwe kwa Ministry ama Department ya Planning na Devolution. Ni kwa nini tumefanya hivyo? Nikinukuu maneno ya rais when he was announcing the commencement of the PBO Act. He was referring to a lady by the name Carol. Na akasema hivi, hakuna haja for a lady to wink to a man who is already coming to her date. Na akasema he is giving all the assurance and the promise that the government, and his government in particular, is ready to implement the PBO Act in spirit and letter. And we know, we have trust and confidence that he meant it and he will do it. Why? Because the PBO Act supports the bottom-up model, kwamba ina recognize organizations zenye ziko kwa ground na inakuja nazo juu kufika kiwango ya kufanya kazi ambayo inaweza leta tofauti na impact kubwa kwa nchi yetu ya Kenya. na tuna imani kwamba president wetu ako na mikakati ya kuhakikisha kwamba PBO Act inakuwa ndio the legal guide ya kuhakikisha kwamba Kenya inakuwa transformed. So we have all the confidence and we know kuna makosa ilifanywa na the former president with respect to the PBO Act kuiweka kwa Ministry ya Interior. Na sababu gani tunasema tunataka iondolewe? Ni kwa sababu we are not a terrorist group. The PBO Act inafanya public benefit organizations zinakuwa a key stakeholder in development and sustainable development for that matter in the country. So kama PBOs have been put on the same level with the government to come up with a collaboration mechanism, cooperation mechanism ya kutransform nchi na wanaenda kunegotiate na government ambayo inawachukulia kama terrorists, do you think there is fairness there? I think there will be a problem. And because we know the president is has got all the intentions of ensuring that we succeed in bringing in transforming this country, then we have the confidence that he will do that. That is one. Now, number two, there are certain organs and institutions that have been tasked with ensuring that the PBO Act is implemented fully. The first person the PBO Act gives power is currently the CS for Interior, because it's under his docket when the PBO Act was commenced. Now, there are some things he was supposed to have done by now, and they're supposed to be done in public. The first one being a gazettement of a notice declaring vacancies in the board that is running PBOs. That was supposed to happen 14 days after commencement of the PBO Act. That was on 14th. So the latest we expected to see that was on 28th of last month. We haven't seen that. And it was supposed to go alongside information or a publication in at least 3 dailies of national circulation. So we know the government has got a way of doing its gazettement, but we haven't seen that in the dailies. So we were expecting to read it in the dailies that this is what is happening, so that we get the guide. Two, the CS for Interior is the person who is supposed to give direction with regard to the implementation of the PBO Act. He was also supposed to convene an all stakeholders meeting to chart the way forward on how we'll transition from the old order into the new order. It has not happened. The last time I heard about CS commenting about the PBO Act is when it was being operationalized. Now, since then, we are looking up to him for direction, and he's just gone mute. So we are getting concerned. The other thing is with regard to the authority. The authority is tasked with coming up with a mechanism to enhance registration. Of course, it's the CS for Interior who is mandated to come up with regulations, but after consultation. We are concerned because there is a gray area in the Act which says that if there is public pressure, then the CS will just come up with regulations and say this is now the guide for the sector. It will be against the spirit of public participation, the spirit of a consultation. So we are suspecting maybe the CS is quiet so that the pressure builds up, and when the public starts saying now we want to see regulations, we want to see a guide in the department, then they say now these are the laws. And the excuse will be because there is public pressure. We are not under pressure. We are organized. What we want is consultations in line with what the president said, so that we come up with the regulations that will guide the sector and come up with a forum and a system of enhancing sustainable development. So we are not interested in a rush, and that's why we are following everything within the law. That is the same reason we petitioned the CS, and we're expecting him to call us or to call all the stakeholders of the PBO sector. It's not a must to call us in particular, but at least want to see a wide range of PBOs being included in the negotiations, and it should be done in public. If I see that it's being done in public as an individual and I'm represented, why should I be there? Okay, so our concern is we want to see the implementation process going in line, in tandem with the promise of the president. So that is why we are insisting that we want the president also to ensure that there is an enabling environment And enabling environment is to ensure that we don't feel threatened. So the only way the president will ensure that we are not threatened, we negotiate, we involve the government and collaborate and cooperate from a point of freedom, a point of equal partners, is when we are in the Department of Planning, or devolution, where we feel we have a mandate to transform the country, not where we feel we are being scrutinized for anything that might be a threat against security. The first person to have initiated the process, the CS. We've not had any official communication from the CS, either in media or through any other forum of communication, regarding the way forward on implementation. The last time we communicated was when it was being commenced.